All right. I know we're right about on time, and I know we've got a unique situation ahead of us.
Very good one.
Dennis, you were telling me about this earlier.
Yeah. So we actually have, it's called Mann Gives It Away. We have Michael Mann here. You know, he's actually the founder of Domain Market, SEO.com, phone.com. When you say OG, he's one of the OGs. So really excited to see him, learn more about him. We have Amanda Waltz that's going to be hosting him today, and I know we're going to learn a lot. So I'm really excited about this. This is going to be a fun one.
Really excited. So welcome, Mike Amanda.
Yeah, let's welcome them on up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I on? Thank you, everyone. Thanks for allowing both Mike and I to be here today. If you're in this room and you know anything about the domain industry at all, as they were saying before, Mike is one of the originals. The reality is he probably doesn't need much of an introduction at all. But for those of you that might not know his history, as well as some of us others, he has made millions of dollars over the past 20 years as a domain sales expert. And as they mentioned before, he is the founder of 3 very successful companies that have been built on what I like to call as brand building amazing domain names, both phone.com, SEO.com, and then with his own domain portfolio at Domain Market. The other really interesting and rare thing is I think I've only seen Mike at maybe one other conference in the domain space at all, and I've been coming for about 12 years now. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike and let him tell you why he decided to come back and join us this time.
Thank you. I spoke to Amanda a little bit before this event, and she was giving me a little pointers, and she said, don't try to be witty, intellectual, or charming. Just be yourself. No, but on a serious note, a guy walks into a bar named Ralph with his dog, and he says, hey, my dog can talk. And the people in the bar are like, there's no way your dog can't talk. We'll give you $100 if your dog can talk. So he says, all right, says to the dog, what's my name? And the dog says, Ralph. And the people are like, come on, get out of here. Your dog can't talk. And the guy's like, wait. Give me one more chance. So he says, okay, what's that on top of the house? And the dog goes, roof. And the people are like, get the heck out of here. This is ridiculous. Your dog can't talk. He's like, come on, just give me one more chance. Okay, dog. So this is his last chance. He says, okay, dog, who's the best baseball player of all time? And the dog goes, Ruth, for Babe Ruth. And then the people kick him out of the bar. They're like, we've had enough of this. So he starts walking down the street, and the dog says, maybe I should have said DiMaggio. Anyway, so the history of my domain conferences is that this is actually the first time I've taken an airplane to a domain conference, even though I've been doing domaining for like 25 years. I've been to a handful of domain conferences, but it seemed like they were following me around at first because when I lived in Washington, D.C., they had this conference in Washington, D.C., so it was a simple drive to get there. We actually had an awesome a party at my house in Washington. Amar was there, Divyank was there, Ron Jackson was there. Actually, Ron Jackson has documented a lot of my journey, so if you can check out the old articles, like Google DN Journal Mann, and it'll pull up a bunch of cool articles. I've actually had lots of articles written in a lot of places, Washington Post, I've been on CNN before, CNET, and all these places, but actually Ron Jackson did the best job of documenting the real story, and he's wrote a bunch of articles, or several articles, so you can check out a little bit of my history that I skipped today if you're interested in that respect. But in any event, so I lived in DC, they had a conference there, then they had a conference in New York, which was pretty crazy. I drove there from Delaware when I lived in Delaware, so that was easy. Then I moved to Santa Monica, and next thing you know, they're having a domain conference in Santa Monica, like literally right across the street from my apartment. So that was super cool. And we actually had a cool party there that I'm sure some of you were at. That was a ton of fun, living in Santa Monica and having a domain party there. And then I moved to Florida. And sure enough, they had several domain conferences in Florida, which were really fun, and they were an easy drive. So this is the first one I've actually flown to, and I don't know if I think I should have driven, because we ended up choosing this thing, Spirit Airline, for any of you who know that, and that was a freaking nightmare. Aside from it being a crappy airline, we were getting ready to take off, and we were waiting like 20 minutes, and then they said, "Oh, we need to fill out some paperwork, so we're taxiing you back to the terminal." Like you got to be kidding me. So we sit there for another 20 minutes or so, and the next thing you know is like, okay, everybody has to depart the plane. I'm like, why would we have to depart the plane for paperwork? And it turns out it wasn't paperwork, they had a mechanical problem. So then we're stuck in the airport, for over another hour. And Mark Goriafi was in the airport with me, and his lovely bride, Justina. He was on our plane. So in any case, so then they're saying there's mechanical trouble. I'm like, I hate flying in the first place. I'm on this terrible airline. Now they're telling me there's mechanical trouble. So I'm like, get me the hell out of here. So we're trying to figure out any other way to escape that airport and still get our luggage, but no such luck. So we eventually got back on Spirit Airline. Some of the people missed the plane because I guess they were unwilling to get back on, or they were stuck in the bar or something. I don't know what happened, but there were the first time the seats were all full, and then when we actually took off, there were several empty seats, a bunch of empty seats. So in any case, we got here, it was a bumpy ride, and next time I'm driving. It's a story of that. But those early domain conferences, for those of you who are there, were crazy. This is like much more mature and much more professional. Like back then, I don't know if you guys know, like Slavik Viner, Miguel, Dave Lismy, you probably know Frank Schilling and his crew were there, Divyank and his crew were there. So like we used to party all night, go to rock clubs, go to strip clubs, and go nuts, and it's not so professional as it is anymore. It was a lot of fun, but a little too fun. So contrasting last night, I stayed up all night drinking tea and watching TV. So it's changed a lot, to say the least. So in any event, it's been a fun ride, and I'll answer whatever Amanda says.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll sneak in a few other questions
Sorry.
then. Just kidding.
I can go forever.
So I think on the top of most people's minds when we read the articles and listen to some of the information out there about you is who or what really inspired you to become involved in the domain industry?
Sure. Well, I'm really a charity worker, and those of you who remember some of the earlier conferences, my charity grassroots.org used to be in one of the booths, and I had my employees and coworkers working the floor and getting people engaged in our charity. And from the very beginning, even before I was into business and domaining, I was doing charity work, and really, a lot of people become successful and then they do charity work. I was the other way around. I was a charity worker that couldn't finance my lifestyle, so I had to learn business and start businesses in order to finance my charity work and, pay for my apartment and things like that. So I started out, really modestly, and at first, just for example, I lived in Washington, D.C. I worked with the homeless a ton. I worked with inner city youth. I branded myself as Mike Mann counter lobbyist. So the first thing I ever did when I learned to use a computer, I got a mail merge program, and I would constantly write letters to every single senator and every single congressman. And back then, you could walk into any office with no security. So I literally took my motorcycle down to Capitol Hill regularly, and I hand-delivered notes to every single senator office and every single congressman's office a bunch of times. And it was stuff about hunger and the environment and, things I still support many years later. So in any event, at some point, I started a company called Internet Interstate, which was at the very beginning of the whole ISP phenomenon. And, our clients literally like, what's the internet? How do we use it? We'd install the software, show them what email was, get them engaged. And eventually we got bought out by a company called Vario. And I still had, a couple dozen great domains left over that Vario didn't get, that weren't part of the transaction. But at that point, I thought I was retired, actually. I had $1 million. The interest rates were 5%, and I was planning on living on $50,000 a year the rest of my life and just doing charity work. But the president of Vario, Justin Joschke, was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're a good businessman, and there's no way you can ever live on $50,000 a year. Like, you're going to start wanting material possessions. Back then, I didn't have any aspirations for houses and cars and vacations and things like that. So in any case, he was right, and it turned out that I'm better serving charity by starting businesses, making money, and building charities, giving money to charities, supporting charities, working on charity business plans. That's more beneficial than me just being one guy helping the homeless at a homeless place, for example. So that's really been my mission. That's what really drives me. Since that time, I've changed a lot. Again, now I'm more materialistic. I have like a beach house renovation I have to do. So, I have to work hard to pay for that. I've taken out a huge amount of debt and loans that I have to support. I have 2 children and 1 on the way. 1 just graduated law school. That was 2 weeks ago, who's very successful, and it's very expensive. My son, Victor, is an extremely successful first grader. He's smart as a whip, who's somewhere back here.
I saw him come in.
Back there.
It's great.
And Elijah is going to be born in July. So in any case, I do a lot of charity work. My main charity is called Make Change Trust now. Grassroots.org I closed a few years ago, but that was very successful. Grassroots.org gave away free services to thousands of other 501c3 charities was our mission. So they got like free phone services, free consulting, free web work, free web hosting, a whole variety of things. But it turned out there's some bigger companies that do a better job at that. When I started, there weren't. We were kind of pioneers in that area. And nowadays, there's much bigger organizations that can do a better job. So we eventually closed that. And now I operate a thing called Make Change Trust. For reference, there's links to all this stuff at mikemann.com. There's links to the book I wrote. There's links to all my charity work. There's links to all the companies we've started and sold, ones we still have. And the other charity thing I'm starting recently is called fearlessleaders.com. If anybody's interested, you can check that out.
Great, thank you. So with everything that you have going on, how do you stay motivated within your own portfolio of domains and motivated to continue to drive sales?
Well, I'm mostly super competitive. I was just born like that. I can't stand the idea of somebody doing better than me. So I have these guys out here that do better than me, so I have to wake up every day while they're screwing around and get up earlier and work harder and study more and hire better. So again, I wrote a book. I try to follow my own lessons from my own book about the work ethic and studying and doing a good job at hiring, learning, leveraging automation, technology, not being complacent about any of the things. So yeah, I'm just super competitive, and I do need to serve charity. I do need to service my debt. I need to take care of my family. So I have lots of motivation, and I've always been like that anyway, so I didn't really have to change. It's just I was born like that, basically.
Good. And so it continues to drive you forward on a daily basis.
Yeah, not as good as I used to be. I'm aging, but.
Wondering if you could share a particular domain sale or story in business that you're particularly proud of.
Well, we've built and sold a lot of cool companies. As far as one that's purely a domain, we set a record, a long time ago. Jeff Gabriel is actually, I don't know if he's here today, but he was the broker for sex.com. So that was in the Guinness Book of World Records, and so that was $13 million at the time. So that was a big thing. We also sold software.com. We sold skateboards.com, snowboards.com, surfboards.com. So we've sold a lot of big names over the years. I still own a lot of really big ones that I have not sold yet. And I own a company called SEO.com that leverages a premium domain. Well, you mentioned that. I own a company that's super cool called Phone.com, which is an awesome company you guys should check out. It's doing really great. And again, it leverages a premium domain. The value of the company goes up because we keep adding clients, but just as importantly, if you look at the comparables, you can see that Voice.com sold for $30 million. So Phone.com has an asset on top of all our clients and our cash flow. Just the domain ostensibly is worth $30 million, which, obviously we bought it for considerably less than that a long time back. And again, SEO.com used to have 120 employees, but now it's a different organization, but the domain itself keeps going up in value. So again, just retaining the world's best domain names. All those other ones I mentioned that we had sold, I wish I own now because they're worth dramatically more than they were worth back when we sold them. So.
True. I would agree with that for sure. With all the strategic moves that you've made within your domain portfolio, it always has seemed to me that you do this with such ease and confidence. Has that always been the case for you?
I wouldn't say ease and confidence. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, I'm very disciplined at buying domains, and I bought, at one point I had 300, well, first of all, we sold another company called buydomains.com that a lot of you know about that had 500,000 domains. So I had to look through and study millions and millions of domains in order to buy 500,000 names. Plus, anybody who buys domains here knows you can't sleep, you can't take vacation, you can't do anything else if you're going to buy 500,000 domains, unless you're planning on losing all your money very quickly. So it required a lot of time and automation, but my current company had 300,000 names, and I've been spending so it's not easy to buy them, it was extremely hard to buy them, but at some point I had 300,000 domains, and the problem is I knew that I had bought them for less than they were worth because I did the analysis when I bought them, but I didn't know if they were worth, if I bought them for $10 or $100, I knew they were worth at least 1,000. They could be worth 10,000, but that's the point. I didn't know what they were worth. They were worth more than I paid, but I didn't know what they were worth. So I had to appraise 300,000 domains, which is almost impossible. So it's back to staying up all night, not taking vacation, working endless hours. And we've built like an unbelievable tool set. I have super smart guys that work for me or software engineers, and we came up with all these tricks and data points and an incredible user interface to allow me to appraise those domains efficiently. It still takes an incredible amount of time to appraise 300,000 domains, no matter how efficient you are, no matter how good you are, no matter how much tools and data you have. But I just finished doing the whole thing, so it's been exhausting.
That is quite a feat.
So as a result of that, for one thing, we're going to delete like 20,000 domains at the low end. We have them priced super low right now, those ones that we'll probably delete, or we might put them on auction. So we're selling a lot for like $350, $500, the lowest end, but a lot of them went up in price, a lot of them went down in price. We had them priced, most of them were priced prior to this project, but they weren't priced as accurately. Now we have much better tools and much better data and spent dramatically more time. So now the prices are really solid. And we can negotiate, we get forced to negotiate with people. We want to get the fair market value, which is what they're priced at, but we want to get paid. So if we're forced to negotiate, we take discounts, but we never take less than 50%. We usually get 100%. Sometimes we get 90, 75. And sometimes if I really need the money and it's a lot of money on the table, I've taken 50%, but we never take less than 50% of the appraised value.
I can attest to that. I've bought domains from Mike for clients, and he's a tough negotiator.
Well, again, it's like most people don't really understand the fair market value. Even if you have an idea, you do better than most people, but even if they have an idea, they don't have the data we have. They don't know the traffic, and we have these special data sets that other people have never known about or seen before. Even the biggest companies that do this stuff don't have the tools that we have. So they can guess the price, but we're motivated to get the price right, because if I'm priced it too high, I get $0. It's like pricing it at zero. So I'm not trying to price them too high on purpose, because that wouldn't help me at all, because I wouldn't be able to sell the name. and I'm not pricing it too low because I don't want to lose any money. So I'm trying my best to use all the tools possible and price them what I consider exactly right. And since I've appraised more and sold more than just about anybody on earth, it's a matter of opinion, but my opinion holds water because I've done the most of this stuff. So we sell stuff every day for whatever prices, and people online are like, how could you get that price? I would have sold that for $1,000, something we just sold for $50,000, again, because they don't have the tools and the experience we have. And having said that, we built a company called AccurateAppraisals.com, which is the world's very best domain appraisal company. Obviously, I'm biased, but it's actually true. Well, again, it's true because the world's best experts appraise the domains there, and I'm one of the appraisers. And the reason it's the best is not because I'm the appraiser, it's because there's 3 appraisers. Braden, I don't know if he's here, he helps me out all the time as one of the appraisers. Amanda's going to help me. We have Mark Daniel, Maureen, some other people that a lot of people know are some of the world's best domain appraisers. So we have 3 people appraise each domain, which again, if it was at another company, they couldn't get 3 people as good. They would probably charge a couple $1,000 for it, and it wouldn't be as good of an appraisal. So we charge $88 to get the world's best appraisal, and we appraise $1 million domains all the time for $88. So it's a great deal, and it reminds me of my book in the sense that when I wrote my book's called Make Millions and Make Change. There's a website, makemillions.com. All this stuff, by the way, is linked at mikemann.com. But my book is very cheap at Amazon, and it's free online for download. There's no ads or anything. So when I wrote it, I thought, well, everybody in the world is going to read this book. How could they not? It's free download, and you're going to learn how to make millions of bucks. And it's a small book. It's relatively simple to read. So I was sure that I couldn't imagine why everybody in the world, everybody talks about wanting to make money. Why? But I was wrong. I still don't know why, but I was wrong. And so that's the same case with my appraisal company. When we launched this, and I got the best people to work with me on it, and we have a beautiful software system backing it up, I thought for sure everybody in the world was going to use it, because I'm like, well, these domains don't have a liquid market. Like, how are we going to get liquidity in this space? How are all these big companies because it's even cheaper in bulk. So how are all these big companies with millions of domains, hundreds of thousands of domains, and all the people have a couple thousand or a couple hundred domains, they don't have the method to get a fair market value, and they also don't have a certificate certifying that it's the fair market value. So again, this is an extremely illiquid market. It makes no sense. Again, if you look on Wall Street, stocks and bonds, they're all appraised by professionals. Used cars are all appraised by professionals. Jewelry is all appraised by professionals. And in a variety of industries, this is the only one where there's billions and billions of dollars at stake, and there's almost no appraisals or hardly any qualified appraisers and hardly any tools. So it makes no sense. So I still have a lot of hope for my book and for my appraisal company.
Well, when you and I were talking previously a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't even aware that you had this tool. So I think it's even a secret within our industry, and more people do need to know about it.
I've done a terrible job promoting both of them.
Well,
that's what it boils down to. I mean, I need to get out there more, and I need to have a booth here.
Well, everybody here can get their own domain appraisals now.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the object.
Yeah. So you touched upon this a little bit, but what are the key drivers for what your current portfolio looks like today? You just talked a little bit about those domains that you're either going to delete or drop or auction. Is there a method to all of this, and why your domain portfolio looks as it does now?
Yeah, well, it's based on the data, first of all. So, whether I'm buying something on auction or I'm appraising my own collection, I look at this data fingerprint, basically. And again, we have all the common data that a lot of people have, but we have a lot of data that other people aren't familiar with that is extremely valuable. And we have this really awesome user interface that allows us to look at it in a certain way that other people can't see the data. So it's all based on the data, the stuff, and then there's comparables. So again, I had this idea related to AI where, again, since we did such a detailed job of appraising our whole domain collection, those are the best comps in the world, is my collection, these 200,000 plus domain names. If anybody else has a collection, they could have some sort of AI bot compare their names to my collection in an AI sort of manner. But that would only give you a rough idea. So that's what we do, is we get a rough idea using our system, and then I manually study it and look at certain aspects of it. And based on my history doing this, I lock a price in. And we have price schedules, so it's like, a lot of people have seen like 19,888, 29,888, 39,888, and then it goes up to 94,888, et cetera. Once it gets to $1 million, we use round numbers. We get rid of the 8s. But
Makes sense.
And a lot of people copy it. They like our structure because they see us selling a lot of domains at 888 ending.
So in that respect, you get into the consumer's head a little bit and know that these are the price points that are buying signals, and they're much more apt to buy if it ends in 888.
Basically.
Okay.
And I don't know if Walmart stole that from me or if they had it first, but Walmart does the same thing. I saw it at Walmart after I had done it. I don't think they stole it from me, but we did it simultaneously. But basically, as we've all seen since the beginning of time, everybody prices everything at $9.99, but then psychologically you move that up to the next level. So that doesn't. But when you move down to 888, the people don't psychologically jump it up to the next level. They see it somewhere in the middle, which is the psychology behind it. It's as high as we can get without people thinking it's at the next level. So 29,888, if they're looking at the 9, they might think that. Maybe we should make them 2888. But in any event, the 888s we found to be beneficial, and we've seen a lot of people copying us as a result.
Yep, makes sense. I've seen it too. Who are some of the folks in our industry who you admire the most?
That's a setup. I actually wrote a little list, but I was like, this list is so long, and I'm going to forget some people. So if you want, I can read it. Or, well, I mean, the people from way back, who are my direct competitors. I mean, Frank Schilling was always the second best. I can't say he was the best.
You're lucky he's not here today.
Kevin Ham did an awesome job. The Costello brothers did a great job. There's so many people that I can barely do it. Amar did a great job, has done a great job. Sahar Sareed still does a great job. He has like 30,000 domain names. The Domain King, I don't know if he's around. He does a great job. There's so many people. That's why this was like a setup. But there's also like 100 great domain brokers, some of my very close friends. There's a lot of people that started awesome domain companies, David Warma's, and on and on and on. So I apologize. There's so many people that are really good. I just named a handful
Agreed.
of them, but
Yeah. And
there's
we're
no lack of
lucky.
great domain people.
Yeah, we're lucky to have people that are so collaborative in our space and friendly and welcoming. I couldn't agree with you more.
Schilling was always the biggest thorn in my side, though, because he was like me. He never gave up, and he worked all night, and he was in every single auction. He was impossible. So thank God he retired.
So if anybody has read Mike's book or any of the articles that he has written, you would know that he's pretty honest about his philosophy on business. What lessons have you learned over the years by adhering to your philosophies?
Yeah. Well, again, there's no shortcuts. Like, it's just crazy. Like the books people write, and the people are touting like a 4-day school day. Like, that's ridiculous. A 4-day business day. Like, I've worked 7 days a week almost my entire life. So the idea that, and people, it's great if you can afford to do it. It's fine. But if you're actually trying to make money, there's all these books about like working less, how it's going to be beneficial to you. And that's just not true. I mean, it's not true. And the other thing is, there's a lot of sole proprietors, which is awesome, but, you really can't get a ton of leverage unless you have a team. I used to have literally hundreds of employees. Now I have a very small team. Well, Phone.com has over 100 employees, but it's a company I started, but I don't actually work there on a day-to-day basis. But my own current close team is very tiny, but they're super hardworking and super smart, so that expands my reach dramatically and allows us to do a lot of things. I could barely scrape the surface without the people on my team by a long shot. So it's a lot of it about work ethic. A lot of it is just self-confidence. I've taken on these very big things, and at first I was super successful, regularly, so my confidence was unbelievably high. Now I've had a handful of problems and failures, so I'm still very confident, but I got knocked down considerably. But that's bad. That's the bad part. Having self-confidence, you have to believe. You have to believe in your plan. And speaking of a plan, again, most people wing it. They're just oh, I'm just going to work. I'm I believe you have to have a very buttoned-up business plan and financial plan. Winging it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work. You have to have a business plan. It has to follow the standard rules of business plans. And you need a lot of people to help you debug it. And then that's your execution plan, and you need to have a great team, a lot of confidence, and a lot of capital, or at least enough capital to meet your plan.
You share that philosophy with another entrepreneur, Matt Higgins. Are you familiar with Burn the Boats?
Sounds familiar.
He talks a lot about how you also can't wing it, and there are no plan Bs. You stick with your plan A until you either succeed or fail.
Yeah.
And I never really, drew the correlation between the two of you until you were just talking right now. You sound a lot like him.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, the other point is that within your business plan, if you don't have one of the world's best domain names, you're making a mistake, because the world's best domain names brings you recognition right off the bat. It's memorable. People repeat it. People think you're a serious business. It draws more leads. It draws a higher conversion value. And it also helps you sell your company if you're trying to sell it or get investors. I use the example of Ring.com, got $1 billion. It was called Doorbot before that, or something, I think Doorbot. It would not have gotten $1 billion and it probably would have never gotten a meeting with Amazon at all. He said, hey, I have this thing called Ring.com. It's the coolest thing in the world. And Jeff Bezos said, really? Let's talk to you. If it was called something else, I would bet anything he would have never got a meeting, and he would have never gotten $1 billion for it. So again, that's just a lesson for every company that most people in this room already know that. But again, it's the shocking thing is, and I'm sorry for everybody in here in the GTLD space, but if you can get a .com, it makes absolutely no sense not to get it, because somebody else is going to have the .com, and then they're going to look better than you or prevent you from using that in commerce. And if you do have the .com, you don't need any of the other extensions. So .com is king. It's always going to be king. There's never going to be a way to displace it. It reminds me of when I was young in school, the teachers told us, we're getting rid of standard measurements. Everybody's going to use the metric system, so you're going to have to learn this metric system thing. It's no, we're never going to have to learn the metric system. The standard measures are staying in the United States, and .com is staying forever. So again, buy the best .com. The people here know it, but the thing that makes no sense is the number of companies that keep naming themselves really crappy .com names. They won't invest First of all, you can buy a great .com usually for $2,000 or $3,000. I sell them all day long at $2,000 or $3,000, excellent names. But for $50,000, you can buy an incredible one, and for $1 million, you can buy something like Ring.com. Mm-hmm. So it just makes no sense to put this effort into a great business plan, put all this self-esteem into it, work endless hours, and then use some crappy long .com domain or some crappy GTLD domain. So it's the same as Bitcoin. There's no end users. It's that's fun trading them around and talking about them and having conferences and bidding them up, but they're not going to hold water, so it's a mistake.
Talk a little bit about what lessons you are teaching your own children about your work in domain investing, if you could.
Sure. Well, first of all, my daughter used to sit next to me at my desk endlessly doing deals, and now she's a mergers and acquisitions attorney. So, and she got outstanding grades, which is interesting because I did very poorly in school, actually.
She must have been listening and watching your work ethic.
That's
Yes.
kind of the point. It's the work ethic, and it's the self-confidence. Those are the main things I try to drive home. But again, just being cautious, studying really hard, documenting everything, working with great people. And again, my son sits next to me working too, and he got 100% on most of his tests in the first grade. So we're very blessed. And so I just teach them hard work. I teach them there's no free ride. Again, there's no consolation prize or a participation prize. And those ideals are a mistake. Competition is what makes individuals great, and then all the great individuals combined makes everybody compete and makes the economy better and makes the world safer, smarter, more secure.
Sure.
So there's no replacement for competition.
Okay. We are about 6 minutes left on time. I know we want to get some questions from the audience, but my final question is, what and where can we, what can we expect next from you?
Well, my domain company is extraordinarily well situated. So if I stay in this business, eventually, we're going to have more capital through sales and through investors, and we're going to start buying other collections and put a bigger tool set into the auctions, where we're not going to let people take good domains out of the auction to the best of our ability. It's getting very competitive, and there isn't as much stuff there. But basically, we're deleting the low end, and we're building out the high end of our collection. So we're going to try to make this company very big. My company, phone.com, is awesome and growing. This appraisal company I mentioned is just starting out, but we think there's no competition for it. If there were, they wouldn't have as good of people working on it. Again, there's 3 appraisers. We give the average and put it on a certificate. So it's a very high-quality appraisal. It'd be very hard to match it, and if anybody could match it, they couldn't do it at such a low price. So I have a lot of hope for those companies. For my charity work, again, I do this thing, Make Change Trust, makechange.com. We give hundreds of thousands of dollars a year away, mostly to small charities in South Florida and people that I can see and work with and talk to. So we'd like to build up that charity more and help more people, expand it more. So basically, a lot more of the same, basically. And I'm doing a terrible job retiring.
Well,
unfortunately.
I think that goes without saying that you have built everything on this hard work, and it doesn't seem like you're ready to retire just yet. So
I'd like to be able to afford to retire at least, but no, I'm obviously not going to retire. But I could use some more cycles at the beach and more sleep and more time with my kids.
Yeah.
So.
We're getting down to 3 minutes. I'm sure that there's some questions out there from the audience. Is there somebody with oh, okay, great. Elizabeth, thank you. I see a gentleman right over here in the front.
Hi, Mike. I was curious, now that you're looking back at all these years and then going forward, what you think the answer to this horrible illiquidity problem in the domain industry is, right? So obviously the answer for you as a business and many other businesses was quantity, and that is one answer. But what do you think the answer is for the industry going forward? Because it is a grossly undervalued asset class.
Yeah, well, there's 2 answers. One is all the names have to be appraised professionally. Otherwise, there's no marketplace, there's no liquidity like every other normal marketplace. So nobody knows what it's worth, the buyers nor the sellers. So it's impossible to make a match without the buyers and the sellers. And then the general marketplace has been confused by all the GTLDs. There's nothing wrong with them. They work perfectly fine, but It's just, they should appraise very low. So again, and it's for the same reason as they're not as memorable. You can trade them forever. You can raise the prices. Again, it's like Bitcoin. It's like the Bitcoin price is outrageous, but nobody uses Bitcoin. They just use it for trading. And that's the same thing with the GTLDs. People buy them, sell them, trade them around. Some people, very few, start companies with them, and most of those people regret it and then call us and say, okay, we're ready to buy the .com. So it's education for the end users. It's education for everybody here in appraising your own domain collections and appraising the world's biggest marketplaces that have millions and millions of domains that are unappraised. So nobody has any idea what they're worth, so they're actually not marketplaces. They're places, but they're not marketplaces. The marketplaces implies some level of liquidity, which they don't have. We have the skills, the people who work for me have the skills to create a bot, but it'll be much better than the ones that are out there, and we probably will eventually get to it. We have a really long tech list, but I need to hire some more people and get through my tech list. But we will eventually, hopefully, have a bot that is much better than the other ones, but there's no replacement for a manual appraisal. And again, I think I'm pretty good at appraisals. I've done more than anybody, and I have lots of tools, but I still don't even trust myself without getting Braden, Amanda, Mark, some other people to balance it out, to get 3 appraisals and take the average. And that's, whether you use my service or not, everybody should get 3 professional appraisals in order to come up with 1 appraisal. So again, there's no liquidity in the marketplace without proper appraisals, and hardly any names at all have any appraisal or any certificate. And again, just the general public has been confused by the GTLDs, by country codes, by this and that. But again, if you see Fortune 500 company, every single one of them, 500 of the world's best CEOs and the world's best marketing people use .com. You can say Alphabet uses XYZ, but they use Google.com. Nobody goes to XYZ. They all go to Google.com. And the only reason they don't have ABC.com is because somebody else has it. They would love it. They would prefer to be ABC.com. They don't want to be XYZ. They had a choice, but they chose an alternate path. So again, there's this general education of the public, consumers, business people. The Fortune 500 already know, but it's all millions and millions of small businesses need to be educated. All the domains need to be appraised. And then we'll have a real marketplace and a lot of liquidity. Anybody else before I get kicked out of here?
I wish we had more time for more questions. Are you willing to stay if somebody
Sure.
has some
Yep.
questions? I think we have a couple of gentlemen who are going to come up and give us some more domain
The last thing I wanted to say is I have some handouts that Peter has, I think, back there. Oh, he already handed them out. Okay, so I have some handouts and business cards if you didn't get them. I put the text of the handouts, if you didn't get them, I put it on LinkedIn and Facebook. I copied and pasted my handouts. So.
Yeah, there's some handouts, and in the back by the camera there and over on the AV booth, there are your cards for people to get in touch with you.
Cool. And I have a social media presence. I also did like 50 hours of live streams that you can find on YouTube and at mikemann.com. So you can hear me talk for 50 hours like this. Again, you can read my book, which will teach you how to make millions of dollars, and you can download it for free or buy it from Amazon for $8.
Thank you.
And call me, email me.
Really
Thank you
appreciate
so much.
it. Thank you.
You did a great
Thank you.
job.
It was
I
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you.